Hey, fam, and welcome to the tripod. We are identical triplets and your co hosts, Heidi, Heather, and Hope. So, this season, we're so excited to be inviting our family members onto the podcast and inviting them into our discussions about what it was like to grow up in a big family. Hope, why don't you tell our listeners more about our family's composition? Again, hoping that they're going to be able to relate to these episodes about growing up in maybe their own big families.
Yeah, Heidi, thank you so much for that. I'd love to tell our listeners a little bit more about our family. If you'll remember, there were 7 kids before the three of us, identical triplets, arrived on the scene, making the total family count or children count 10. Mom and dad were 47-ish at the time.
Wow.
Let's pause there.
Wow.
47.
I
They had
know.
7 kids, and then 3 more were added to the mix.
Lot of kids.
Cannot imagine.
Can't
Big.
imagine what that must have been like.
Mhm.
And then, as you both know, mom and dad, they both passed when they were fairly young, right?
Mhm.
Dad was 59 when he died. Mom was 68 when she passed. And the three of us were 13 and 22, respectively. So we're also going to talk a little bit about, what happens to a family when the center of that family, your mom and your dad, are gone. Everything generally shifts, right? Some families grow closer, others drift apart.
Mm.
Yeah. Hope, thanks for just describing what the composition of the family was like. I really appreciate that. I know Head does too, and hopefully our listeners do. So yeah, like we had talked about, right? We're inviting our family members onto the podcast this season, and the way we're going to do it is that we're going to be sitting with most all of our siblings in a kind of one-on-one format, and we are going to be asking them the same sets of questions. And I think probably what we're going to sort of really note is how different some of the answers to these questions are going to be. But the questions are these, okay? Where did you fit in the family? What role did you play? What was it really like growing up in a big family? What did losing, your parents mean at the age and stage you were when that happened? And the last question is, what lessons did you carry forward from having grown up in that environment?
Well, Hyde, I don't know about you and Heath, but I'm looking forward to hearing not only, our answers to those questions, but really looking forward to hearing our siblings' answers to those questions. Like you said, I think we're going to hear different answers to the same question. So should be exciting.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait to sort of have these kinds of more intimate, kind of personal conversations with them. So, well, Hev, guess what time it is?
What time is that, Hyde?
It is time for us to get going with this episode. And so you are in the hot seat today.
Okay.
Hope's laughing because
I've been in the hot seat before. It's okay.
okay, well,
Are you
good.
ready to sit in
Hopefully
the
I
hot
can
seat,
answer
Heath?
your questions. Hopefully I can answer your questions.
All right. Well, the first one is kick us off, even through Hope's laughter, by
Yeah.
giving us a mini bio. Okay, like kind of maybe starting with what number child you are in the family system.
Awesome. And just before I start, I also just want to say that I'm super grateful to our siblings for wanting to join this conversation with us too. So back to me, because it's all about me, and my bio. I am the 8th child born to our parents, Helen and Vincent, 2 awesome humans, or they were. And I am the first born triplet. So that means that I'm 4 minutes older than Hope, and I'm 8 minutes older than you, Hyde.
Ooh,
Ooh, the oldest
I guess
triplets.
So much more experienced, Heather.
I guess we should respect authority.
Yeah, of course, you have to respect authority. Do you have to do everything I tell you to do?
You might want us to.
Absolutely not. I want you to be your individual beautiful selves.
Okay, we'll try our best.
Yes. So more about me. I should say
Please do tell.
yeah, do tell. We were all raised in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is a community about 20 miles northeast of Boston. And I believe, doesn't Hope have some term for Marblehead?
She does, but Hope, why don't you go ahead and tell us what that term is to describe
Well,
a beautiful town?
well, I appreciate you both asking, and I hope that the term that I'm going to say is the term that you're thinking of. But I'm going to say that Marblehead is a beautiful seaside hamlet.
Yes.
Did I get it right?
That is.
Yes,
Okay.
spot on.
Awesome.
That's
Awesome.
that's exactly what I was looking for as well.
That's right.
I'm so glad I passed that test.
Right.
That's the little private joke between the three of us, right? The head that whenever Hope talks about Marblehead, she always says it's just a beautiful seaside hamlet.
That is exactly what she says. That is how she describes it. And it's an accurate description.
And I hope that now and forever forward, our listeners also describe Marblehead or remember Marblehead as a beautiful seaside hamlet.
And then they break out in song?
Maybe they could write a poem.
Marblehead forever.
Maybe,
God bless that
maybe
dear
someone
old
could write
town.
maybe someone could write a poem about it.
I think someone's written a song about it already.
Yes.
There's probably a lot that's been written about it. It's
I
actually a very historical place. So,
well, we were joking about the song, right? Marblehead forever, God bless that dear old town. But when you said poem, I thought you were giving a little shout out to the poem that I wrote. I wrote to our family members about our house.
oh yes, I remember that. Heidi.
That was so beautiful.
So sweet. It really
you should
was.
read that. You should read that on the podcast one day.
Okay, well,
Heidi, how about when we do your interview, you start with the poem?
Do you know I didn't make one for myself. I made one for all you guys and never made
I know. I remember. I remember.
It was about our childhood home.
It was about our house on Orange Street in the beautiful seaside hamlet of Marblehead.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well,
I don't have a copy of the poem, but maybe I'll work on a poem for Marblehead. Okay. Go ahead.
Right.
You can continue.
No, I was going to say in this little beautiful seaside hamlet that Marblehead is, we all attended Marblehead Public Schools. And, after high school, I attended Boston College, where Go Eagles.
Fly Eagles. Oh, that's Philly. Sorry.
Yeah. Fly Eagles fly. It is Philly. Yeah.
I'm just going to say Go Eagles because while I was an Eagle, I majored in finance and business. And ever since I graduated, I've worked in financial services, in the Boston area for 30 years now. Scary.
Maybe even a little longer than 30 years.
Maybe just a few years longer than 30 years. Yeah. And now as I shift to a more personal level, I am married to a man named Matthew. Now, I've known Matthew since high school. We were high school sweethearts, and we've been married now for about 29 years, you guys.
Do you actually call him Matthew?
Well, you know what? I usually call him Matt, but as he has gotten older, I think he prefers Matthew, to be honest.
Well, that is something that Heidi and I did not know about your husband, who we've known for a very long time. Actually,
well over 40 years.
As long as you have known him.
Yes.
Yeah, longer. I mean, we're almost 57, right? So
yeah.
You started dating him when you were 13, you said?
14. I started dating when I was 14. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
So
for what?
A wee youngster.
43 years. 43 years. We were just wee youngsters. And what would he do? He would honk the horn.
Yes.
Maybe of his truck.
Heidi and I knew Matt from, well, at least our first experiences with Matt, and actually for quite a while, was that Matt would come to our house in his truck and he would beep the horn, and Heidi and I would watch Heather put her coat on and run outside and jump in Matt's truck.
I don't know what iteration of truck that would have been, because there have been many iterations of trucks over the years, but always trucks. We're always talking about trucks and boats. That is, that's a lot of what I do. Talk about trucks and boats.
Outside of your professional career.
Outside of my professional career, correct.
So if any of our listeners want to hear about trucks or boats, they should try and get a hold of you.
They can get a hold of me, but it would probably be more beneficial to them to tune into the podcast when we interview Matthew.
Excellent.
We can
Okay.
ask him all about trucks and boats.
Well, now they have something, to look forward to.
That's
And
right,
now,
because that will be talking his language, right?
yeah, and now Hope and I
Talk about diesel engines,
we
and we're
know
good to go.
to address him moving forward as
You can
Matthew.
address him. You can address him however you guys want to address him. He is considers himself a brother to you guys. So, but lucky enough, this Matthew, that's my husband. We have two children who are great, and so our daughter recently graduated from college, and she now lives and works in New York City. And our son is currently pursuing a high school post grad. And will be attending college this fall. We're still trying to, determine which college he's going to be going to. So all exciting things.
So a proud mother of two wonderful young adults.
Yes, I am a proud mother and always say that they make me want to be better. So yes, thank you, Hyde. They're great kids.
Well, thanks for that, Heather. That was very, enlightening and insightful. Learned a little more about you.
Hopefully our listening community now knows a little bit more about me.
So, Heath, so tell us, given the fact that you were child number 8 and triplet number 1, what role do you think you played in the family? Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know what, Hopi? I think that's actually a great question because I know it's a conversation that, the three of us have had many times over the years. And I think, inside of our family, I always perceived myself as being this like self-sufficient and adaptable kid. And I think that's, part of the challenge of growing up in a big family because, sometimes you might feel a little bit unseen within a large family. You kind of try to adapt and fit in and sort of like be the quote, good girl. You don't really want to upset the apple cart too much. And then, I guess within our triplet set, I always sort of perceived myself as the oldest, or sort of like a mother or motherly figure. That's what I would say in terms of, sort of that role.
Heather, do you think what you just said about sort of assuming the motherly figure role, do you think that's something that you ascribe to yourself or that the family ascribed to you?
Again, that's honestly another great question too, because and it's something we've talked together many times about, how, being a triplet is unique, but it's also complex. And I think for us, you sort of come into this world together and people couldn't tell us apart, right? So as an individual, you can kind of struggle, I think, to create your own identity. So that question is so good because I honestly am not sure if I perceived myself as motherly or if really it was a role that was ascribed to us by our family because of our birth order. So that's a really great question, and I guess one to unpack when we talk to both you and Heidi.
Well, it was so interesting. I tried to hold myself back when the word motherly came up because all I kept thinking was, I want my mom me. I don't know why. It was some kind of association I had. Like when you hear the word motherly, what comes to mind? So I thought I'd
Yeah.
share that with you guys.
Well, I think it's interesting. And Heather, I think, for us to unpack that a little bit when Heidi and I talk and tell a little bit more about ourselves. But it is interesting, right? The three of us technically were the babies of the
Mhm.
family. But because of our birth order, I always wonder, because you were first, and then of course Heidi and I were second and third, whether or not your being first triplet made you sort of be that, the one who's assumed the responsibility, motherly role, whether you kind of put that on yourself or whether the family put that on you. So
Yeah.
I just sort of fascinated by that.
Yeah. It's like oldest, middle, youngest child syndrome. Like, I wonder if we have the traits of, sort of that oldest child, middle child, youngest child.
Even
Yeah.
though the three of us were babies, right? Heidi, go
Right.
ahead. I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
No, I just was going to say, I think probably, even though we were like a subset within a larger system, that Heather, yeah, probably absorbed some of that, because she's the oldest, she's like the responsible one, hope you're the middle child and do stuff that like a middle child does. And, I'm treated like the youngest. So it'll be interesting to kind of, yeah, compare and contrast for sure.
And also, Heidi, to your point, it'll be interesting to hear how our older siblings saw us,
Definitely.
right?
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe we'll learn a little bit more about whether that was, ourselves doing that or if it was other people sort of putting that persona on us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Kind of
internalized.
ascribing those personas to us
Mm-hmm.
and how we took that away into sort of broader aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Makes good sense.
Did you have anything else to say in regard to the question Hope first asked?
No, I think that's it. Again, it's like that motherly. I just always felt like very protective of the both of you. I don't know if you guys
Thank
remember,
you.
like when we would walk to school. Remember when we would walk to school with our friend Allie? And I was always like really paranoid of everybody getting hit by a car when we were trying to cross. We were trying to cross the street. I was always like, look both ways, everybody.
That's so cute. I do remember those walks. Those were so fun.
Yeah, they
We
were.
used to pick her up on the way to school. And then when we were old enough and had a car, we would do the circle. We'd get Pete Bebbing and then we'd circle around and get Allie. Remember the red Volkswagen
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
We
with
were
the
all
rusted back seat?
yeah,
Yeah,
like
You
hoping
guys
things don't fall through the floor, the back floor.
exactly.
You
Exactly.
remember? Hi, do you guys remember we were coming home from like field hockey practice one night? Hope I think you were driving that car, and we must have had I don't know how many people we had in a Volkswagen Bug,
It was
but
like a whole field hockey team.
yeah. Do you remember there was a backpack like hanging out the back,
Yes.
and the police pulled us over?
Mhm.
Was it the back or was it hanging down like through the rusted floor?
It could have been the rusted floor. I wouldn't put it past that car because that
Because
car.
the trunk, remember the
Yeah.
trunk, like the VW, the trunk was in the front.
Right.
Yeah, the engine was in the back, right?
Yeah. So I think it was.
So it was maybe the floor. You're right.
Probably
Wow,
was. Yeah.
that's
Which
even
is
scarier.
crazy. I literally think we had like 10 people in that car.
Yeah.
In a car, like who literally were like, okay, let's just hope that
It wasn't the brown Subaru, right? It was the red Volkswagen
red
Beetle.
Volkswagen.
Oh yeah, that was convertible too, wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a fun car. I don't think we had it for very long, given the fact that the floor was like rusted out.
Shout out to Matt Ventresca, though. Didn't he give us that car?
Yeah,
He did.
Yeah.
He would be our brother-in-law.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Anyway.
Fortunately, yeah, has passed away a while ago. Well, okay, Hev. So thanks for answering that question. Next question. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it. Am I ready for it?
Yeah.
Like Taylor.
What was it? Oh yeah. Should we do the dun
Dun,
dun
dun,
dun?
dun.
Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so Head, what was it like, to grow up in the big family that you did, and I guess talk to some of maybe the good things about it and maybe some of the challenges.
You know what? And again, this is something we've talked about a lot. I mean, I loved growing up in a big family. You know, I think what I love so much about it is that our house was busy and filled with people. So we always had this built-in community. And we're never really alone, like in a physical sense. And I know you guys certainly remember the energy around, family holidays and the tradition of our Saturday night dinners, where mom served like hot dogs, baked beans, and brown bread. And then the Sunday dinners that took place, at like 2:00 in the afternoon dinner. And
Yeah.
we
Super
probably
fun memories of those things, right?
Yeah,
super
they were
fun. Yeah.
amazing.
And, sorry, go ahead, Hyde.
I just said they were amazing, great memories.
Yeah. And I think it was really memorable to all of us because it was a time that, all of our siblings would try to come together and gather together to be together at those times. And so, I always just felt really supported because we always had such a large group of people around us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, does that resonate with you guys?
Yeah, it does. I think, it's always good to have people around you, but sometimes, you probably yearned for your own space too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, right. Because we often didn't have too much privacy.
There was no place to go.
Right.
No, think about our bedroom, right? We shared a room, the three of us and our sister Faith, right? So we had one room, we had two bunk beds,
Yeah.
two closets that we split, so
Lots
each
of
us-
dressers,
lots of dressers.
dressers and closets, all stuffed, packed with clothes.
Yeah. But we each got like one dresser, or not even a full dresser. We had like a drawer.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah. So I mean, right. And that's actually great because on the flip side of what I said about loving so much growing up in a big family, there are obviously challenges associated with that, and limited space was one of them. But I also think that, mom and dad were just juggling a lot. And, so I think, you know, one of the challenges, it's like you're always fighting to sort of be heard or have your voice heard within such a large family. And funny enough, I know again, this is something we've all talked about, but whenever we get together with our family members, what happens? Like, what are you always trying to do?
Get your voice heard.
Yeah, because our
Everybody
family has,
likes to talk. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but,
Totally.
like our family loves to have multiple conversations at the same time.
Very true.
Very true.
I think one of the reasons I speak loudly is because I was always trying to have my voice heard. Do you guys feel the same way? Do you feel like you speak loudly?
I actually have a pretty soft intonation to my voice. So I understand what you're saying. Um, but I don't necessarily think that I actually talk loud or, assert myself that way. But
Do you think your soft tone has anything to do with the fact that everyone was always trying to talk over each other?
yeah, I'm sure, after a while, you sort of say, what's the point in trying to get my voice heard because this is too tough, you know?
It is tough.
It's
Too
like,
much of a battle.
right. You just kind of go, retreat,
But Hyde,
Retreat. Exactly.
I I always feel like you always remain calm in most situations. Like when we're engaged in family conversations, like you're always a calming voice, and you're an incredible listener, right? You listen really well. Where again, I think back to the dynamic of the large family. Everybody's trying to fight to speak, and at the
To
same
be
time, no one's
seen.
to be seen. And but at the same time, no one's really like listening. I think to what you're saying. Does that resonate with you guys? I'm sure.
Yeah, and I think sometimes in big situations like that, right, or big systems, maybe people are already sort of trying to think about how they're going to respond to what's being said. And like to your point, maybe not listening to what somebody's actually saying. Um, so yeah, I mean, lots of different dynamics.
There are so many different dynamics, and again, love growing up in a big family, but it's not without challenges, as we've just discussed. And we'll hear more from both of you as well.
Yeah. So, had anything else you want to say about that before we move on?
Nope. Hit me with the next question, guys. I'm good
All
to go.
right. So, we talked a little bit at the start about the fact that we all lost our parents early on. Can you talk a
Mm.
little bit about,
Mm.
what that meant to you and how that loss impacted you?
I mean, gosh, I'm similar to you guys. Losing mom and dad at a young age really had a tremendous impact on me. I will say that, as we all remember, dad's death was very sudden, right? He died of a heart attack, and obviously very painful and scary for all of us because he had been the patriarch of our family in a very, very traditional way, right? Like mom stayed home to take care of all of us, dad
Yeah.
provided financially for the entire family. Um, and on the flip side of that, mom's death was not sudden, right? Like mom
It was
was sick with,
prolonged. Yeah.
yeah. And, and we all took part in her disease, right? I mean, she was sick with cancer for 3 years. And so cancer sort of followed us all around. Right. And before she died, we watched her suffer for a prolonged period of time. So for me, the impact of losing our parents when we were young was that it really created a lot of stress and worry for me, and really started to worry a lot about sort of everything, especially money, because it goes back to mom didn't work, I shouldn't say mom didn't work. Mom had the hardest job in the entire world, right? I don't have any idea how mom managed to basically take care of 10 children during the course of her life. Like there is
Yeah.
no more of a hero than our mom, but I just mean she wasn't paid, in
She's
money
she
for,
she worked inside the home.
She worked inside the home,
Yeah.
and you know, she relied on dad's pension for support after he passed,
Right.
right? Um, so I think, you know, again, the impact on me, it's like I think all of us, you know, have basically worked to make our own money since we were 14 years old.
Yep.
And you know, I have this like, you know, I don't ever want to be financially dependent on anybody. And I'm not sure that's good or bad, but I think that's a direct result of having lost our parents at a young age and really having to sort of fight for ourselves and take care of ourselves.
Well, I think really like more a reflection of watching mom and what happened. You know, again, she worked inside the home. Dad was, quote, the breadwinner. More an impact of watching her and what happened to her and the stresses that she had after dad passed, right?
Yeah, just like adapting and adjusting to that, you know, person that was traditionally the one bringing the money home.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, again, it's that, you know, watching her struggle. She didn't really know a lot in terms of like managing the finances for the house. And so I really, yeah, I think probably all three of us never wanted to be in that position, right? We wanted to sort of be able to understand it and manage it ourselves. Um, and then, you know, I think longer term for me, and again, this is something we've talked about so many times. It's just that, you know, the loss is very meaningful emotionally, because there are so many big moments in our lives, you know, where we did not have our parents. And that would be, you know, weddings and births of our children. And again, I know this is a term that hope you've used before, but you know, it's not like we're carrying these grief sacks around with us. But the impact, I think, for me is sort of that longing feeling, like longing for what you missed. And again, it's a feeling that's really never gone away for me despite having my own family. You know, it's like I think losing mom and dad, they it creates this hole in your heart that's never actually completely filled, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, of course, right? I mean, longing for them to just be there for you to ask questions about, you know, some of the things that make you happy or things that you're struggling with, or, you know, the opportunity for your kids to have known their grandparents. It's all of those things that, you know, I mean, for me, certainly I know, you know, I long for. It sounds like the longing that you feel is that, and could be other things as well, but certainly something that I'm sure Heidi, you feel as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we'll have an opportunity to talk more about this when we're getting interviewed, you and I. So
Yep.
we'll save some of that for a little bit later if that's
Yep.
cool.
Yeah, that's totally cool.
Absolutely. So, what you guys get another question for me?
Yes. But thanks, Head, for, you know, your responses to that, because it's definitely hard either way, right? Losing parents is always just tough to navigate. Yeah. So last question really, before we wrap up is, so like, what would you say are some of the lessons that you learned growing up the way that you did? And sort of then what have you carried forward in your life as a result?
Yeah, I think growing up in a big family has taught me so much just about sort of how life works. But I think the most important thing it's taught me is really the value of hard work, you know, work ethic, and then how to be responsible. You know, again, it goes back to like mom was a superhero. She was always busy. You know, she was cooking, cleaning, doing you know, doing the laundry, ironing, you name
Everything.
it. Yeah. And so I think I was always conscious of that fact. So, you know, I feel like all of us did our best to pitch in, you know, really as best as we could.
Mhm.
We would make our beds, we would bring our clothes to the hamper, etc. So again, I think it
Try to
implies
do the laundry.
try to do the laundry
Try to
back
do the
then.
laundry
Yeah,
with the washer and dryer that were not even next to each other, that were across a basement from each other.
I know. It's crazy to think about
Mhm.
because then, you know, the clothes would be soaking wet coming out of the washing machine. And then you had to carry this heavy, you know, laundry
Basket
bag
filled
or
with
basket across our basement. which, was like a scary dungeon.
A scary dungeon that had the dryer, and then next to the dryer, the brown table where most all of the clothes were,
Yep.
because they were folded there. And then just even the step of bringing them, putting them in a laundry basket and putting them away. Right. I mean, we looked, when we were looking for clothes, we would go and look on the brown table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it was quite a inefficient process, but just I guess had to be that way because of where the water line was, right, and where the
Yeah.
dryer
Yeah.
had to be and stuff like that. Yeah,
And the
crazy.
brown table too, it was just the sheer volume of laundry, that mom was doing for us, until we started doing it ourselves. But yeah, so I think just kind of the combination of that stuff really implies that we learned to be part of a team kind of at a young age. And you guys will remember all too well that our brothers would often pay us to do chores. Do
Yep.
you remember?
Of
Yeah,
course.
25 cents. Get me a cup of coffee, I'll give you 25 cents. Get me something to eat, I'll give you $1. We were all
Yeah.
just, what else
It,
can we do for you?
it was such a great way for us to start to earn, just to start to save even change when we were young. We learned good, valuable lessons about money when we were, little.
Yeah. And I mean, it was like $1 to wash dishes, clear the table. So again, I think that also helped us learn not to rely too heavily on other people, which I gave me confidence actually that I could take care of myself. So I think there were so many lessons to sort of unpack from growing up in the family. But I would say that for me, those are the primary lessons that I learned from our family specifically.
What about ones that you've kind of like carried into your adult life? Would you say that you kind of answered both those questions?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's really just the value for me. It's just, the value of hard work, right? And how to be responsible and having the confidence to, if there's something that I want to try or do, I have confidence that I can at least, try or do it, right? It's sort of like up to me to just sort of define my own path. I don't wait around for other people to help me. And again, that's positive and probably negative. you know
Yeah.
I'm not so great at asking for help.
Yeah, right. Because, you always viewed yourself as someone who could take care of themselves. So if you can take care of yourself, then, why get help, right?
Yeah, and or if no one's coming to help,
I'll just do it myself.
just do it myself,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
we'll feel
Yeah.
disappointed in
Right.
the you know aftermath of it. So
Well, and it's also funny because I know that, like, again, this is something we've talked about. When you do ask for help, like, you're asking for help because you need that help like immediately. And if you ask for help and it's not done immediately, you're like, why did I even bother asking for help? I should have just done it myself, kind of attitude. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
working on it. I'm
that
working on it.
that reminds me of a funny
works in
meme that's
progress.
going around right
Works in
now.
progress.
What's the meme, Hopi?
Just a woman who asks her husband to help, and he pauses for just like, a very short period of time, and then she just like kind of loses it on him and starts saying, if you weren't going to help me immediately, you know why even bother? That's just what that reminded me of.
Yeah.
Heather, that's super helpful, and so thankful that you've been able to share all of this stuff with us today. I know Heidi and I know the three of us have talked about it before, but it's just great to hear it again. And so before we wrap up here, are there any other insights or anything else that we haven't asked you that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Any other insights? I guess I would just say quickly about, having grown up as a triplet, within that large family. And I know we've addressed this, maybe on some previous podcasts too. It's for me, it was such a blessing, but again, it's also really complex, because you're never alone, right? Especially as kids, and you always like we always had built-in friends. There's someone, you guys remember our childhood, the way that the way that I do, and again, it's such a gift. But at
Or
the
the
same time,
memories, or the memories we do or don't have, right, Hyde?
right?
It's so true. It's
all the
bad.
stuff we've forgotten. But I think, again, it's like at the same time, we were often introduced as a unit, like we were the triplets growing up, especially in our little seaside hamlet of Marblehead. Um, so your identity, was really shared before it was individual. And I think somewhere along the way, you kind of ask like, who am I outside of us? And I'm sure that our listeners can kind of understand that within sort of the complexity of their own family system. But that's something I thought was important to share too. That having grown up as a triplet is quite unique, and it was a blessing, but it's also really complex.
Awesome, Head. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I have. So appreciate what you had to share. And hey, fam, I hope that you gained some insights into Heather's experience as she was willing to sit on the hot seat, and hopefully she didn't get too burnt by the questions that we asked. You
Not
know,
at all.
next up, we're going to hear from none other than Hope. It was Heather first, then Hope, and after Hopi, it was me. So for now, thanks for listening to the tripod. You can find us on all podcast platforms, and we'll catch you later. Bye.